Buckingham Palace, a fortress of tradition, a symbol of unwavering power. But behind those imposing walls, a storm was brewing, a tempest of family drama, media manipulation, and ultimately, a seismic shift in the very foundation of the British monarchy. The year is 2025. King Charles, grappling with health challenges and a palpable decline in public confidence after the Prince Andrew scandal, understood that the old ways simply wouldn't cut it anymore. The monarchy was bleeding credibility, and drastic measures were needed to staunch the flow. He saw the future not in antiquated protocols, but in the steely resolve of his son, Prince William, and the quiet strength of his daughter-in-law, Princess Catherine. This wasn't merely about damage control, it was about survival. The king knew he had to entrust the future of the crown to the next generation, and so, in a move that would reverberate through the palace corridors and beyond, he made a momentous decision. He handed over the reins of crisis communication to William and Catherine. This was more than just a delegation of duties. It was a clear declaration of trust, a signal that the monarchy was entering a new era. The first sign of this new order came in the form of a confidential order, dubbed the Autumn Mandate, signed at Clarence House. This document, shrouded in secrecy, granted Catherine unprecedented authority to manage the fallout from a series of escalating crises involving Meghan Markle. Leaked letters, renewed mentions in connection with the Epstein scandal, and a relentless barrage of hostility from American media outlets. Catherine was now tasked with navigating this treacherous landscape. Simultaneously, William was assigned an equally critical role: to be the voice of the monarchy, the ultimate authority in moments demanding clarity and finality. He would be the one to draw the line, to speak with unwavering conviction, and to protect the institution from further damage. It was a heavy burden, but one he was prepared to bear. The stage was set for a showdown, a confrontation that would pit the traditional values of the monarchy against the relentless forces of modern media and personal ambition. The catalyst for this clash was a carefully orchestrated campaign of media manipulation, allegedly spearheaded by Meghan Markle and her team. This campaign, William would later reveal, involved paid placements designed to damage Catherine's reputation, insinuating that her popularity was wielded as undue influence, and that King Charles felt threatened by Meghan's rising global profile. For years, William had remained silent, refusing to engage in a tit-for-tat battle of claims and accusations. But this time, the stakes were too high. The attacks were not just aimed at individuals, they were aimed at the very heart of the monarchy. And William, as the future king, knew he could no longer stand idly by. He had to act, and he had to act decisively. The weight of the crown, the weight of history, rested squarely on his shoulders. He knew the world was watching, waiting to see if the monarchy could weather this storm or if it would crumble under the pressure. The tension was palpable, the air thick with anticipation. The palace walls, once a shield against the outside world, now felt like a prison, trapping the royal family in a drama of their own making. But amidst the chaos and uncertainty, one thing was clear: the old rules no longer apply. The monarchy was changing, evolving, and adapting to a new reality. And at the forefront of this transformation were William and Catherine, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, together. The revelation that Meghan had allegedly collaborated with Sarah Ferguson sent shockwaves through the palace. Fergie, with her own history of royal grievances, was said to have been enlisted as a conduit of pressure, not against the institution itself, but directed squarely at Catherine during her most vulnerable period of cancer recovery. It was a move that many saw as not only deeply personal, but strategically calculated, a betrayal that cut to the core of the family's already strained relation. The speed and precision with which William responded spoke volumes. This wasn't a knee-jerk reaction. It was a carefully considered strategy, a line drawn in the sand that could not be uncrossed. His public statement, delivered with chilling composure, was a masterclass in controlled authority. He unequivocally denied any royal bullying, refuted claims of Catherine being favored, and laid the blame squarely at Meghan's feet, citing her own choices and persistent efforts to undermine the monarchy. But the real bombshell was the disclosure of evidence pointing to deliberate media manipulation, paid placements designed to tarnish Catherine's image. These weren't accidental missteps or innocent misunderstanding. They were, according to William, intentional acts of sabotage. The press, initially stunned, scrambled to confirm the allegations, quietly retracting certain articles that had insinuated Catherine's popularity was wielded as undue influence and that King Charles felt threatened by Meghan's rising star. The days that followed William's pronouncement were a whirlwind of media frenzy and public debate. Accusations of royal cruelty, emotional pressure, and favoritism flooded social media and opinion columns. Meghan's team in California worked overtime, attempting to control the narrative, but the damage was done. The carefully constructed image of a victimized duchess was crumbling under the weight of William's revelations. The British public, it seemed, was largely on William's side. Polls showed a significant drop in support for Harry and Meghan, while backing for William surged. The monarchy, for the first time in a long time, appeared united and resolute, a stark contrast to the image of division and dysfunction that had plagued it for years. Within the palace walls, however, there was no sense of victory or celebration. The atmosphere was one of grim determination, a recognition that this was just the beginning of a long and difficult battle. The conflict had exposed deep rifts within the family, wounds that would take years to heal if they ever could. The focus now shifted to damage control and protecting the institution from further attack. Catherine, in her role as the guardian of narrative control, worked tirelessly to steer the royal image forward, emphasizing the family's commitment to duty, service, and tradition. William, as the voice of the monarchy, stood firm against any attempts to undermine its authority, sending a clear message that the old rules of engagement no longer applied. The world watched with bated breath, wondering what the future held for the British monarchy. Would it survive this crisis? Would the family ever be able to reconcile? Or would this be the beginning of the end, the moment when the institution finally crumbled under the weight of its own internal conflicts? Only time would tell. The atmosphere at Windsor Castle was far from celebratory in the aftermath. The 8 advisors summoned by William understood the gravity of the situation. Whispers of leaks, media manipulation, and the relentless scrutiny of the public weighed heavily on them. It was there, behind those imposing locked doors, that William made his declaration. Passivity was no longer an option. He branded the situation deliberate sabotage. From that moment, a meticulously crafted plan began to take shape. Every move was calculated, every word measured, every decision strategically aligned to protect the crown, the family, and the institution's future. The palace, once a symbol of tradition and protocol, was now a war room, strategizing for a battle unlike any it had faced in recent history. But what had William truly discovered behind closed doors at Windsor that forced him to act so decisively? The answer, it turned out, was a leak of unprecedented proportion. Palace officials would later describe it as the most severe internal response since the abdication crisis of 1936. For the first time in generations, the Royal Communications Unit was forced to activate a full separation protocol against a living member of the House of Windsor. The trigger wasn't a single interview or a surprise appearance. It was something far more dangerous. A cache of private messages allegedly written by Meghan Markle between 2021 and early 2023 that began circulating within palace walls. These messages, according to those who reviewed them, went far beyond mere frustration or sadness. They included accusations that King Charles had been emotionally distant during Meghan's pregnancies and claims that he had intentionally promoted Catherine while allowing Meghan to fade into the background. One message reportedly carried a warning that no one could ignore. If Charles wouldn't defend her, the story would do it instead. The palace reacted swiftly. Within 24 hours of the leak, emergency meetings were held among senior staff. Lady Fiona Walsingham, the deputy head of sovereign affairs, spearheaded the talks. Lawyers were brought in, along with former MI5 risk specialists. Their assessment was direct and unsettling. Meghan was no longer simply a dissatisfied duchess. She was now considered a strategic communication threat to the crown. This assessment led to King Charles issuing Memo 2005, transferring full control of all crisis messaging to William and Catherine. The shift was immediate and absolute. From that moment forward, William became the only royal authorized to address anything involving the Sussex. Catherine assumed responsibility for managing the family's public image, setting strategy, and steering the royal narrative forward. A former head of communications summarized the situation succinctly. This wasn't damage control. It was a complete redraw of the monarchy itself. William had endured years of media pressure aimed at his family without responding. But sources say the breaking point wasn't another headline. It was his brother. After repeated public attacks accusing the institution of racism, cruelty, and emotional neglect, Harry remained silent. Privately, he supported Meghan's claims. That silence, insiders say, hurt William more than any article ever could. In early October, William sent his brother a final message. He reminded him of the truth they had lived together. He insisted that Catherine had never acted with unkindness. Then he asked the question that would ultimately end everything. Why stay silent? Harry's response, an aide later revealed, was stark. Telling the truth would cost him everything. To William, that was the moment trust irrevocably collapsed. From then on, patience transformed into confrontation. And at the heart of it all were two children caught in a war they never chose. During his public address, William made one thing unequivocally clear. The crown would never strip Archie and Lilibet of their rights, their dignity, or their future. As the storm raged outside, whispers circulated among palace insiders that the conflict had escalated far beyond public perception. It was no longer just about image or reputation. It had become a struggle for control, influence, and the very direction of the monarchy. A far larger, more decisive plan was quietly unfolding behind closed doors.